All right, so first I'm going to introduce the authors, and then I want them to each speak about their, products and their books and everything else. So let me start with Leigh Bardugo. She was, yay! She was #1 recently on the New York Times bestselling YA list. Yay! And Leigh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your books? All right.
Hello. I'm just going to keep doing that for like 40 minutes. Hi, I'm Leigh Bardugo. I wrote the Grisha trilogy, Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. And my new book is called Six of Crows. It's the story of 6 kids from pretty desperate situations who are offered a huge amount of money to break into a fortress that has never been breached before and heist out a scientist who has secrets in his head that could unleash magical havoc on the world. So we sometimes describe it as Ocean's 11 meets Game of Thrones, although these kids are not nearly as slick and suave as the guys in Ocean's 11 at all. They're not your usual merry band of thieves. They don't give presents to orphans at Christmas. They're more likely to like maybe rob the orphans and set fire to something.
All right, and up next, Lila Sales. Yay!
Hello. So my new book is called Tonight the Streets Are Ours, and this is my 4th young adult novel. This one is about a girl who becomes obsessed with a blogger from afar based on what he writes about himself online, until ultimately she and her best friend set out on a road trip to New York City to track him down in person. And they find him, and over the course of one epic night of adventures together, they come to find that he's not exactly as perfect as he had seemed like he was going to be based on the way that he portrayed himself online. It's not that he's like secretly a serial killer or anything. Like he is, like an 18-year-old guy, and all the things he said about himself are true, but there's some things that he kind of lied by omission in the way that we all do on the internet.
And up next, Josie Angelini.
Hi. I'm the author of the Starcross trilogy, and my new series is called the World Walker trilogy. I don't know, I like 3s. What can I say? It just works for me. The first book was Trial by Fire, that came out last year, and this book is Firewalker. Sorry, we changed the name. I keep doing this. This is Firewalker is the second book in the series. And this series is based on a girl who's taken from our universe and brought into a parallel universe by an alternate version of herself. And when she gets to this alternate universe, she finds out that her other self is an evil witch who hunts down scientists and hangs them. And so there's everybody. You know what? You gotta have goals. You're just not getting anywhere in this world. So it's kind of dark. It's set in an alternate Salem, Massachusetts, and it's about it straddles 2 worlds: our world, our Salem, and another world which is run by witches, and they're not nice people. So, interesting place.
And up next, Emma Mills, which her book actually is on sale tomorrow, so you guys are getting a sneak peek.
Yay, thank you. Hi, I'm Emma. Yes, my first book. This is my very first book ever. It hasn't quite come out yet. Comes out tomorrow. Currently available here at Books and Books. But yeah, it's was described often as Pride and Prejudice meets Friday Night Lights. So this is a YA contemporary. It's a little bit about sports. It's a little bit about romance. It's a lot about a family relationship, the relationship between the protagonist, Devon, and her cousin, Foster, who has come to live with her family at the start of her senior year because his mom is unable to take care of him. And he's kind of this kooky younger kid, and Devon has been an only child her entire life, and so she kind of has to learn how to navigate this new relationship. And it turns out that Foster, as kooky as he is, he has this innate innate talent for football, and so he's kind of fast-tracked onto the varsity team. And through him, Devin meets the kind of dashing varsity football captain, Ezra, who appears to be he appears to be somewhat sullen and reserved, kind of like a Mr. Darcy type. And that's where our romance aspect is going to unfold. I'm very excited to share it.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so you guys get an idea of how this is going to go. We're going to ask them some questions. You guys can answer it as you wish, and whoever wants to start, whoever wants to go second, third, fourth. And then after that, we'll have an audience Q&A, so you guys will have a chance to ask them questions. So let's get started with our first question. What character in your books do you most relate to?
The rookie's gonna kick it off, because I was 17 when I started writing this book, and it's in no way autobiographical. But one of the aspects of Devin's journey is not really knowing what she wants to do with her life, and kind of trying to sum herself up for college applications, and she kind of feels like she's lacking, whereas everyone around her has these like awesome skills and talents and traits, and she kind of feels like she hasn't found her spot yet. So that was the relationship, or my relationship to her. That was the thing that I really identified with while I was writing, because I was in a similar place at the time that I started writing the book. So that's me.
So I think probably Nina in Six of Crows. She's sort of spent her whole life being told that she's too loud, too big. You know, she eats too much, she laughs too loud, the whole bit. And I feel like that's basically me. And I don't think I have Nina's confidence, but I definitely aspire to it. And I also share her love of cake. So.
Oh, nice.
I loved Nina's love of cake.
Passion. The real ship in the book was Nina and cake.
That's what I meant when I said earlier that it's like a Shakespearean comedy where everybody winds up with somebody. I meant Nina with cake. Yeah, I mean, I am similar in many regards to all of my protagonists in all of my books. So in Tonight the Streets Are Ours, the main character, Arden, is a deeply loyal person, and that's something that I really relate to, and that's my way into her. In one of my earlier books, Past Perfect, you have a main character who's like really deeply nostalgic, and that's also something that I am.
What are you nostalgic for?
Oh my god, like everything.
The year 1882.
Yeah, no, I mean like
Do you have like a particular?
no, like you give me a thing that was once good, and I'll be nostalgic about it. So yeah, I think, I mean, and I put little pieces of myself into all my characters, but it's usually my main character who is most me.
In this series, it's kind of a departure for me about the characters. I would have to say that who I relate to most is the Lily-Lillian dichotomy, because they're the same person, but what I relate to the most is their flaws. It's kind of strange. I really do. I relate to the fact that they're both very stubborn, and they're both convinced that they're right most of the time. And writing this book was kind of like truth smack. So that's that.
And speaking of characters, who was your favorite character to write, and who was the hardest? The one that you were just struggling with the most?
So I loved, in Tonight the Streets Are Ours, writing the blog posts from this guy who she becomes obsessed with and then like sets out to find, because he's just like so dramatic and self-absorbed and like very like self-consciously writerly, and so I actually but also charming, and that was you totally, I mean, you have to see like why she gets so into him based on what he writes. So I actually and he is an aspiring author himself, and so I actually went back to some of my old journals and took some pieces out from my teenage journals and then made it into like a boy who lives in New York City and whatever, but like that was the fun part.
I think in the Grisha trilogy, Stormhond was the easiest to write because he was just a lot of fun. Like he was like, I didn't always like, I would sometimes be like, insert witty reply, because I wasn't quite sure what his comeback was going to be, but he was sort of, his confidence made him easy to write. And I think in Six of Crows, the easiest character to write was easily Matthias. Like he's such a drama queen. He's just this big blonde ball of drama, and he's so intense about everything. You know, like are any of you guys Avatar: The Last Airbender fans? Okay, so I kind of think of him as like a Scandinavian Zuko. Like he's just constantly like honor, you know, and like. And it was a very fun voice for me to write, even though he's like just so wrought up all the time.
So both of our answers are like overly dramatic men.
Overly dramatic dudes.
It's a tough one. I feel like I really enjoyed writing a character called Jordan, who's sort of like the coolest guy. Like ever, in my opinion. And so I think I had a lot of fun with that, of creating this guy that like everybody loves. But yeah, that's a tough one. It's a tough question for me. Yeah.
I would have said Jordan, even though I didn't write it.
Nope. That's good. I picked right.
For me, the easiest to write was also the hardest. Lillian, I almost didn't touch any of her passages after I wrote them because they're pretty brutal, but they just, like, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna write this and get it over with and done. And like, nobody edited. I got no red ink on anything she said. It was just like, there and done.
And if you were to describe your main character in just 5 words, what would you do? Oh yeah, you can do that too. You can do that too.
They could be like disconnected words.
Completely.
Okay. So I would say witty, occasionally problematic, but well-meaning, which is hyphenated. So that's how I'm gonna
That's
get it
good. That's
through.
good.
Yeah.
Redheaded, stubborn, wrong-headed,
I like that.
powerful, and good-hearted.
Perfect.
Full of contradictions. So I'm only going to use 2 words because that's what they use in the book. The main character here, she basically, when she was a kid, she got turned into an American Girl doll, essentially. And you know how American Girl dolls, they always have descriptions of them where they'll be like, she was like a brave and spunky child of the prairie or whatever. Okay, somebody knows what I mean. Like, she was like a schemer and a dreamer or whatever. So this one, hers was recklessly loyal.
This is hard for me because I have I don't really have a main character. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with Kaz since he leads the crew. All right, so ruthless, driven, broken, shady. How many is that? One more? Not lovable. I'm gonna go with tough.
Awesome, thank you. And if your book were made into a movie, who would play the main character and what would be on the soundtrack? Oh.
Okay, so I just put up the playlist for Six of Crows. So I mean, I have, like, it is a long playlist, but I can say that Kaz's song, every time I wrote one of Kaz's chapters, I queued up Sinister Kid by the Black Keys. Like, if you want to be in Kaz's head, like, that is like one of my favorite. There's also a great song called The Crooked Kind, which is like the sad side of the Dregs. That was it's by, like, I've actually never listened to any of their other songs, which I guess makes me a bad person. But by somebody called Radical Face. It's a terrible band name. Sorry if you're out there, Radical Face. Love you. No, you're great. As far as who would play them, that's always hard because they're supposed to be, in ages between 17 and 19, and most of the actors, like, I'm really aware of are not that age. I don't know. I'm gonna pass this off while I try to think deep thoughts.
Yeah, similarly, though there are like places online where people tell you who they want to play your characters. So like there's some website, it's like a fictional casting thing where you can take like any book that you want to be a movie and then fictionally cast it.
Like
if list, yes. So yeah, so that's really cool. And then you can like thumbs up other people's suggestions of who should play characters. And also, I'm a big reader of the blog Forever YA, and they will always do a casting call and like so basically whoever they said,
that's the way to go.
That's who I want. In terms of playlist, I put together like there's obviously the road trip part of this book, and so I put together like a good road trip playlist for that. The title of the book itself comes from this Richard Hawley song called Tonight the Streets Are Ours, which is like very, I don't know, beautiful and triumphant and romantic. And so like definitely that.
The soundtrack would be creepy.
That's awesome.
It's like I would listen to a lot of this band called Purity Ring. Very few people, you know who they are?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's got like this witchy sound, and it really would get me in the mood to write the music. And casting, I'm so bad at that. People ask me, and I'd literally go online, and I'll be like, help me to like other people. And I'm like, you cast it when people ask me this question. And I have no idea who they're talking about. Who?
Holland Roden from what's it called? Teen Wolf. Yeah.
I've never seen this. Is she?
Don't worry, I got
Cast.
Cast. It's been decided.
It's tough. I gotta say the same thing. Like, it's pretty tough. I'm not sure, especially because of the dearth of actual teens playing teens in movies today. So I'm not quite sure who I would pick. I listened to a lot of a band called the High Highs when I was writing this book. But whoever scored Little Miss Sunshine, was it Dana and Devachka? I would have them score the movie because I love that. I love that score.
And for my next question, what do you guys feel makes for a good romance?
suffering.
I would say chemistry for sure. I think that this is a bit of a nod to Pride and Prejudice, and so I think Darcy and Lizzie have just the best chemistry, and so that for me is a good foundation.
You got to torture them.
Torture them a little bit.
I torture them.
Yeah.
And they got to go through it, and you got to feel like you've. Like by that, well, I usually write trilogies, so it's like you got to feel like by the end of that third book that you've been through it with them. Like the reader has to go through the breakup and the back together and the ouch and the yay all together.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this. So I have a day job, like as well as writing YA novels. I also edit kids' books and YA novels, so I spend like a lot of time. Not just writing romance, but like actually editing other people's romance. And like earlier this week, I transmitted a comment to one of my authors where I was like, hey, like the way that they're kissing each other, I don't actually think like technically makes sense because I'm pretty sure her head is still like lying on his lap while he's stroking her hair. So I don't think they could be, like I'm just not. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I could go on about this, basically, is what I'm saying. But I think one of the things is, like, for a meaningful romance, I think having two characters who actually experience things together. Like, you can have attraction at first sight, right? You can see somebody and be like, that person's hot. But to really have the sort of meaningful connection, I think you have to, go through things together and ideally face hardship together and come out on the other side, and that brings people together.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Are Game of Thrones fans? Anybody? So I noticed something a couple seasons ago that there was Jon Snow and Ygritte. How much more interesting they were to me as a couple than Robb Stark and I can never remember her name because it's changed from the book. And his, like, they were just sort of like, they really wanted us to love Rob and his wife. And so there was like lots of scenes of them canoodling and talking about the baby and should we name it after your dad? And I was like, ah. Whereas Ygritte and Jon were doing things together. Like they were fighting side by side and getting to know each other. And so to me, that romance was a lot more interesting. So I think it's just sort of a variation on what you're saying. Like it's it's going through things together and having like something that they have to get done, or some way that they are forced to interact with one another even if they don't want to. But I think there are different kinds of, like, I love the will they won't they, I love the, you know, enemies become friends, like I love the friends become lovers, you know, like I can't say lover without saying lover. So yeah, those are, and I love like past romances when they're together and something came between them and then they have to get back together. Yeah. Love.
So what is the best part about writing for teens, and do you have a favorite fictional character?
Hold on, those are two different questions.
All together.
Just get them together.
Thinking of our favorite fictional character.
Then let's start with that one.
On that earlier about the favorite part about writing for teens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we spoke briefly on this before, and then these ladies said it way better, so I'll try to paraphrase. But it's the readers and the nature of the readers, I think, and their attachment to the stories, and perhaps the stories have more meaning at that age and more of a connection to it, perhaps. But now I'm on deck to say my favorite fictional character.
Yeah,
but but it's just because there's so many, and you like different people for different reasons. Yeah, I'll call out someone here, Leigh, and say of the one of the recent books I read, in Six of Crows, I just loved Inej so much. I thought she was fantastic. So that's me.
She was really loyal.
I can relate.
I'm just gonna go way back to my childhood and say, like, Anne from Anne of Green Gables. I just love her.
Everybody went, oh.
Yeah, similarly, in my childhood, Charlotte from Charlotte's Web. Just. That is a spoiler. And you know what? Then I experienced nostalgia for when she was alive.
Favorite character? Like, I don't know. Sometimes Arya Stark, sometimes Batman. Like, there's a series called The Lyman Chronicles by Dorothy Dunnett that I really loved. I think Lyman was one of the big influences on Sturmhond. I don't know. This is a difficult question.
That's good.
It
So-
is, except I don't like children.
I have pretty much a final question, and then we're going to open the floor up for questions from you guys. So what advice would you give to aspiring young adult authors?
I mean, I don't think what I'm going to say is radically different from what people have heard before, which is draw a pentagram and chalk. It's finish a draft, finish a terrible, horrible, messy draft, but finish a draft. Read outside of your comfort zone. And I always feel like I wrote my first book pretty late, so I always feel like I'm talking not so much to like the young writers who have the world before them, but to people who maybe have put aside their dream or have put it on hold for a while, to just say there's no expiration date on your talent. Like, it does not matter what you look like, how old you are, any of those things. People always want good stories, so if you have one to tell, you should tell it.
I agree with all of that. Read a lot and don't hesitate to read the same thing over and over and over again, because that's how you figure out the mechanics of it. That's basically like if you wanted to become an inventor, that's you taking apart a machine. And don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like if your dream is to be a writer, like if your dream is to be sitting up here one day, don't become so obsessed with one thing that you've written and like you have to make that perfect, you have to sell that, you have to like write it, make it as absolutely good as you can, and then start writing the next thing.
And don't give up. Like, that's the number one thing. Don't give up on a draft. Like, sometimes you need to put it away and pull it out again. But get to the end of it, because unless you got to finish it and then you're a writer. You know what I mean? It's like, and once you get it done, that's what you can submit. And I know so many people who are like, it's not good enough. And I have dear friends who actually work in writing in some way, and they want to switch to becoming a novelist. And I have this one friend in particular, such such a huge talent, and she just can't finish that first draft. And it's like, you just got to get to the end of it, and then you can submit it, and then you will be up here. I promise you, you know. But it's hard. It's hard to get through that first one, and don't beat yourself up until you.
Those things are connected to what you guys just said.
Yep.
That when you put all the emphasis on one story, like this is my idea, or this is the one that's going to make me, that is the draft that's the hardest to finish, because it's got to be the great American novel.
Right.
There's no book that can withstand that pressure.
Right.
The most helpful thing I heard when writing was don't be afraid to write badly, which I think is something we've covered a little bit here. And you did a bit of stuff on YouTube in my college days, and I still appear on there occasionally. And in vlogging, a lot of people often say to make the type of videos that you want to watch, and I think that can apply to writing as well, and writing the type of story that you yourself would want to read. So I think that's helpful, I think.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So who wants to ask some questions? Over here.
From the end of your other trilogy to the start of this one, how many years have passed between the
2 years. 2 years have passed. But you don't have to have read the trilogy to read this book.
Yeah, I will vouch for that because I didn't read any of Leigh's books before this one, and it's awesome.
My question is for Leigh, and this is about cats.
Yes.
Besides the Darkland, besides the Darkland, probably Cass is my favorite one of them all. And once I got to the end, I wonder, does he not think he's good enough? I mean, just in terms of his life, in terms of the group of people that surround him, and in terms of by them.
I don't think that Kaz has a particularly. I think Kaz is like a lot of people in that he thinks a lot of himself in some areas.
Like, he knows he's the smartest, toughest kid in the room. But I just saw Mary raise her hand like she's the smartest, toughest kid in the room. And I was like, yeah. But I think he feels, I hate commenting on this because I feel like the writing should just do the talking. But I think it's fair to say that he knows how broken he is, and he doesn't have faith in his ability to fix that. And he believes that, he really believes in Inej's goodness.
We have a question over there.
From the online audience, Megan from Reading Books Like a Boss asks, what has been your most gratifying writing experience, whether it's from a book or a scene in a book, like what's made you feel really great?
Well, I had a baby last year, and I finished the third book in this series on time. Like, literally, I turned it in on the day it was due, and I kind of went, yes, like, baby and book, and I managed to pull it off. Like, some miracle happened, but yeah, that was one of the most gratifying things I've ever done, that I actually made my deadline. I was like, I can't believe it.
Any questions? Any more? Over here.
I know that, like you guys said, like when you're writing something, like to not give up and like to keep going. But like, what keeps you motivated, like to keep going? Like, do you find any sort of like inspiration that will help you like through that?
Okay,
So I think once you are working as an author, hopefully your deadlines and the fact that you have an editor and an agent waiting for you to deliver a draft helps. You know, it becomes more like a job, but you have to treat writing like a job before you get paid for it. The fact is that I think we put a lot of emphasis on inspiration. Probably the number one question we get is, where do you get your ideas? Because I think there's this idea that like inspiration somehow is the fuel for writing. And I don't believe that. Like, I think that inspiration only gets you so far. And the fact is, one of the things I had to get comfortable with was I was a good writer when I was a kid, right? Like, I was the kid who was like, I get A's in English and I'm great at reading comprehension, and so I thought, and I loved to write, and this was like, I love it, like it was great. And I thought it was always gonna feel that way. Like, if it's your calling, it should always feel good. and that's just not true. The reality of a book is like days of failure, like, you know, and enduring the failure and the feeling of writing badly and of being bad at something, and just getting through that. And I also would say, like, we live in a culture that does not reward aspiring anything, right? We reward success. If you tell somebody you're writing a book, what's the first thing have you been published? You know, they're not like, oh, what kind of stories do you like? What kind of books do you like? It's always about, you know, they're looking for some measure of success. And that's a shame, because people who are coming up need the support the most. But, like, that's why it's a war. It's the war of art. And your job is to go to battle and make art when nobody gives a damn. You know, that's how you earn it. So I think thinking of it as like that thinking of it as like you're marching to battle as opposed to like you're just waiting for the muse is, to me, a little bit more of a motivator.
Yeah, I just posted this thing on my blog the other day. It's this T-shirt that says, and I don't normally post T-shirts, but the T-shirt said, and I couldn't stop laughing when I read it. Writing's easy. It's like riding a bike, except the bike's on fire, and you're on fire, and you're in hell. And like, that is the perfect description of it. It's you know, it's such a struggle, because you know how to do it. You know you can do it. You just have to do it. Like, you have to get through it. Like, you can ride a bike, but you're in hell. And so that's.
And then on a practical level, just things like, you know, like physically separating yourself from distractions. So, like, don't keep your phone near you. Don't keep Facebook and Gmail open. You know, right? Like we all do all the time, I'm sure. Yeah.
Stay away from social media.
Yeah, and, you know, and don't, like, if you're getting stuck on what to say next, like, do something where you're not just sitting and staring at a blank screen, but don't do something where you're putting other ideas in your head. Don't go watch TV, because you're not going to be able to hear your own thoughts over the TV. Like, go for a walk, go for a bike ride, take a long shower.
Or sometimes, on the practical level, write down, I don't know what to write. Like, I don't, like, if you can break the paralysis between your hands and your hands, your head and your hand.
Yeah, or just write down what you do know. Be like, she has red hair. She is 17. And, like, see eventually what you come to.
Just keep moving your fingers.
Any other questions?
We do have another one. Caitlin actually, this is a question we talked about before, we wanted to get, we got it, wants you to sort your characters in Hogwarts houses.
Yes.
Swear this wasn't a plant. We didn't know.
No,
Did you prepare? No. Well, I don't think it's as meaningful. The book's not out yet, so I guess you could learn it and then you'll know it going in. Yeah, but I feel like that might spoil it.
I'm a Ravenclaw and I'd like to read about a Ravenclaw.
That's true. I don't know. I can't imagine that because I'm a Slytherin and I have no interest.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of great YA authors who I know are Slytherins. Lauren Oliver is also a Slytherin.
I like that you said great YA authors.
She's like, I stopped listening after that. Okay, so Arden, the main character in here, is totally Hufflepuff, like 100% Hufflepuff. And I think Peter, the guy who writes the blog, probably also is Slytherin. No, he's not Slytherin. You think he's Gryffindor?
Totally
I think he's kind of a.
Gray teeth and kind of a jerk.
I think he's kind of. I think he's kind of a coward.
I think he's a Gryffindor. He's like, I am brave, but secretly he's like, oh, help me here, you know. I may have a little anti-Gryffindor bias.
I think maybe there's some anger here. Well, Lillian's definitely a Slytherin, and probably Lily too, and I think Rowan would be a Gryffindor.
I think that Devon and her cousin Foster would both be Gryffindors, but I think Ezra would be a Hufflepuff. But I haven't given a lot of thought to it. That would be my guess. Yeah.
I'm a Hufflepuff. I am too. Yeah.
Kaz is definitely Slytherin. I think that Nina's Gryffindor. I think that Matthias is Gryffindor. I think Jesper is a Hufflepuff. And I think Wylan is a Ravenclaw. Yeah. Oh, and Inej. Oh, Inej is Gryffindor. I think she's Gryffindor. Well, maybe not. I don't know. That's a hard one. She's a hard one. Have to see after book 2.
Any other questions from the audience? thank you so much for coming. Oh, question. Yes.
I have an old person's question.
Sure.
So, have you read The Catcher in the Rye? And if you have, do you think it's a good young adult novel, and why or why not?
I suspect you want Lila to answer this question. I mean, I read Catcher in the Rye in, I don't know, junior high or high school. I can't remember what. I remember really loving it and really loving Holden. I had an argument about Catcher in the Rye with a friend at Comic-Con recently. And he was talking about like how much he hated Holden and how how he was so weak and how he just complained about everything. And I suddenly realized that this guy who was like my high school crush, that he had always been the hammer and not the nail, you know? Like he was used to, like he didn't really get what it was to be an outsider, an outcast, and to feel powerless in a situation. And so that was and I think for me, my Catcher in the Rye was Dune. But I mean, they're not really similar, but they are both kind of coming of age stories. But only, yeah, I'm gonna leave that.
So I have 3 criteria that I use to define whether or not something is a young adult novel. And those 3 criteria are, 1, that it focuses on teenagers, told from their perspective while they are currently teenagers, so it's not a looking back perspective on like, but now that I'm older, what I learned was how little I knew or whatever. 2 is that even if it is very dark, it ends with an element of hope. And 3 is that the industry has deemed it as such, which is to say that it is published by a young adult or children's imprint. So interestingly, there are books that are published as YA in America and not in Australia, for example, or vice versa. And that's simply because of the imprint that chooses to publish them. So, right, those are my criteria. Catcher technically does not meet those criteria because it is not published by a children's imprint. That being said, I do think that if it were published today, it probably would be. Like it, a modern book that reminds me a lot of it is called Someday This Pain Will Be Useful to You by Peter Cameron, which I highly recommend if you haven't read it. And that was published as YA. Though again, I think the author could see it going either way. The one I will never give you though is To Kill a Mockingbird. It's not YA. It's not YA. It's not YA.
I don't think Catcher in the Rye is YA either. I really don't. I mean, even though I read it as a teen, I saw it much more. I really didn't see it as the story of a teen that goes through an arc. I saw it very much as like a snapshot in time, and there was something very. For me, it didn't seem to follow the YA journey that isn't set in stone. But there's definitely more movement of character in most YA properties. And like you said, they sort of end with this feeling of hope, even if they are very dark. And I definitely agree with that. But needless to say, when I read it in high school, Holden Caulfield was my emotional boyfriend. And then I grew up and I went, what a twerp. Like, it was like this weird, I'm so glad I broke up with that guy, you know? But yeah, it did have a huge impact on me when I read it. So in that way, I guess it is YA, because I also see YA books as being they shape a lot of teen thought as well as encapsulate it. So, but I think it's a grown-up book.
Grown-up book. What does that mean? I gotta level with you guys. I haven't read it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Emma, I know your book technically isn't out yet, but it's here, so yay. Do you guys still find it surreal to see your books on bookshelves?
Yes. And I've only just started to see it. I mean, I get a little thrilled just looking at it here right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Does it ever wear off? I hope not. I hope it always feels like that, because it is truly thrilling. It's like a dream come true.
Yeah, no, it's always awesome. It's just the best.
Also, like when you see it, like, I mean, to see like real people reading in the world, or like it's on somebody's actual bookshelf and you're like, oh, whoa, it's not just my publisher sold it to the bookstore. Like the bookstore sold it to a human.
I think especially with Six of Crows, I had this kind of weird, when they sent me the finished copy, I had this almost like out of body experience where like when I got I cried when I got the Arc of Shadow and Bone because it was like this realization of this long held dream. And I didn't cry after that. I was sort of like, I mean, I cried, but not about the books. So many tears. I never wept again. So it became almost like, oh yeah, look how pretty they look together, yay. And then when I got this with the, like the pages and the maps and the cover, and I didn't understand how beautiful the cover was gonna be, and I had this moment of being like, this is the book of my dreams. Like, this is the book I dreamed had. Oh my God, don't say, oh, I got emotional again. Holy tears.
One more question.
Do you guys ever find it, like, how hard do you guys find it leaving your families to go on these tours? Does it ever
Oh my God, it's so.
I have a drop cam on the baby's, like right over the baby's bed, and I can watch her anytime she's sleeping. We've all been watching. I'm always like, oh look, my baby's sleeping right now, and everyone's like, get your baby out of my face. It's horrible. It's horrible to leave her. So yeah, well, I'm the only one who has spawned.
Awesome.
I don't miss anybody. I love it. Did I mention this? I have a day job. I'm not in the office.
So do you have to use vacation time to come on tour?
No, I went swimming in a pool today. I'm in Miami. Like, I'm not complaining.
You reach this weird point where you have no idea where you are. Like you go to the airport and you're checking in and they're like, and where are you headed today? And you're like, don't know. Don't know where I am, don't know what day it is, don't know what season it is. Like, you lose all sense of time.
Earlier today, they made me check a bag and they said, is Miami your final destination? I was like, I'm not clear what you mean by that.
Who can say, really?
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for tonight and for your time, ladies. Thank you so much.
All right. Hello. Am I on? I can't hear myself. Okay. So for all of you who are here, please stay patient for a second. I'm going to give you guys instructions. For those of you at home, thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to order the book, call the number on your screen and we can personalize it and ship it to you anywhere in the U.S. Thank you and have a good night. Okay, so for those of you who are in store, we have to create this room for the signing now. It's the magic of books and books. So for those of you who have not purchased your book, it's behind the counter.